Hi guys, it's Sam here from Bargain Hunting Blonde, and today I am bringing you a chatty video about do we expect too much from our luxury bags. So the idea for this video came up when I was kind of like chatting with my husband, and we were talking about how people seem to think that everything that is like wrong with a designer bag that they get is a flaw, and how we're spending a lot of money, so we really do expect like a really high-end product. But like, what does that really mean? Like, what is a high-end product? Like, for example, we were discussing Hermes, and we were looking at my latest Birkin, which I'll put the reveal video down below, but I did get a Birkin 30 with gold hardware in fauve. It's a stunning bag. It smells amazing. And I was talking to him about it, and how long they take to make and all of that. And I mentioned, like, they're made by hand. So I pointed out to him, like, let me see, actually, I have a Birkin sitting in front of me. It is not my Birkin. But how, since they're made by hand, they often do not have like perfect stitching. And on the Birkin, the stitching is a contrast stitching, so it's white, so you can really see it. And this is big red, so this is my 35 in Rogue or not with silver hardware. I did by Preloved, and I am looking at her now, and her stitching is like pretty good. But you do notice, let me see if I can point out, some like areas where this was done by hand, so not all the stitches are exactly the same size. So for example, you can kind of see it right here, that the stitches are a little, I don't know if this is going to pick up because it's not a contrast stitching, but just believe me when I say that there are some areas that the stitching is not identical to other areas of the bag, and like, I'm okay with that. I know they're made by hand. That's not something that bothers me. But he asked me, he's like, but wouldn't that bother other people considering how expensive these bags are? So then we got to chatting. So I've kind of divided this into like 3 different areas that we kind of like expect perfection, and are we expecting too much from literally a handbag? So first is we expect perfection on purchase. So this for me is a little bit harder than some of the other areas, but the idea is it a flaw, or is this just like these bags have aspects of them that are made by people, and therefore there is going to be some human error? So for me, it is a little more understandable, especially when you have something like a Birkin that is fully made by hand, that your stitches might be not 1000% like identical, because there's a lot of human labor going into this bag. But I think there are also times where there are what I would consider a flaw that are so evident. Like, for example, I have seen a lot of pictures recently of Chanel flaps where the flap is completely crooked, and like, that is a bag that is not fully made by hand, and 2 is like a visible flaw to the eye that, as someone who's paying those, depending on which bag you're getting, almost $10,000 or over $10,000 price for a Chanel classic flap, you don't want to see that. So I completely understand where that sort of flaw or that sort of issue with a bag is coming from, and why we as a consumer do not want to purchase something that we can very easily visibly see is messed up and costs about, $10,000. I mean, any amount. Every designer bag basically now is like above $1,000. So a good chunk of change. Where I think we are getting a little too picky, and please let me know down below if you agree, disagree with any of this. This is just my personal opinion, is when we're on like the purse forum or talking to luxury friends, or just like kind of browsing through the internet, and there'll be people and they'll post a picture of a bag and they'll be like, oh my gosh, it has such a big issue. And I'll be like, I don't see the issue. Like, I look at it and I like really look at it, and then I like zoom in. I'm like, I still don't see the issue. And then eventually, because I think a lot of people will say to them like, hey, I don't see the issue, they really zoom in and then they circle a very, very little area of the bag and be like, this is horrible, I have to return it, all this other stuff. And I think, to me, that is perfection you are never going to get from any item, especially an item that is made from true animal hide, like leather or lambskin or goat skin. Like, they, just like our skins, have imperfections on their skins, and those do translate into the leather on the bag. And some brands are much more picky about the leathers they choose, like Hermes, than other brands which are not. So things like that, to me, like, you're always going to have those flaws, but I don't really necessarily think that's a flaw. Or, some people want patterns to match up perfectly, and to me, that is not a big deal, especially if like the pattern is not perfectly matching up on like the bottom of a bag. But for others that's huge, they would not buy that. And I understand we all vote in this sort of scenario with our money and choose to buy it or not buy it. But I think in general, we are starting to see things that we think are flaws that are like not really flaws. And maybe before social media and all this like really intensely like looking at and inspecting bags, we would not have noticed. Like, I just think sometimes we expect too much perfection out of something that is just a good that we are then going to be using. So I think we as like a luxury group throw around the word flaw like way too quickly, or like, you know, other people say different things like an error in the bag, etc. But like the idea of a flaw way too quickly. Like, I think to me a flaw is like actually an issue in manufacturing where like you're getting something and like it's missing stitches, it's not like, you know, there's like glue on it, like that sort of thing is different than like us really, really expecting every single part of the bag and seeing one little flaw on, which is really just part of the leather. Or, you know, I think people will be like, oh my gosh, these stitches aren't completely and totally even. Like things like that, I think we're just expecting too much. And if that bothers you, obviously don't buy the item. But I also think that means like Hermes is seen as like the top fashion house, and you might not even find the top fashion house as like work craftsmanship and quality like up to your standards, which I think is kind of crazy because I think the bags, like this bag is beautifully made, even with some stitches that are slightly different than other stitches, because like this is a handmade bag and like this leather definitely is a natural leather, like it's not a stamped leather, because this is a Trillium Clemence. So there are definitely like what I could see of people saying flaws in the actual hide of the bag. I don't think they're flaws at all. I think they're just beautiful and add to the bag. But I know like people will think like a lot of Togo bags, they have veining running through them, which this bag does not, but they'll have like veins on them, which is just part of the leather, and people like think that's a flaw and don't like it because of that. So I think we're just being like a little too picky on what is literally a handbag. And granted, I understand our pickiness level goes up as their price increases go up, but it's just something to think about. And I understand too, that's why a lot of people don't like pre-loved goods, because they don't want to see any errors with their bags. But like, this leads me into part number 2 is like, we expect there to be no wear on these bags, these designer bags when we use them, which is just completely unpractical because it's a bag, you are using it. So it's a good, you are using it. It's like wearing shoes and not expecting there to be creases in the leather, but you wore the shoes. And the whole reason why you buy the item is to use it. So I think we like forget that in our using of any item, regardless of how much it costs, it does wear. Like, and I just think we can't really grasp that. And that's kind of like a problem where we're just expecting perfection on something that we're using. And when you're using something, it's not going to be perfect. Do I understand that there are some bags out there, mainly looking at you, Chanel, that you'll literally use like 2 or 3 times and have horrible corner wear, and you were careful with the bag and you weren't like throwing it everywhere? Yes. And for a lot of people, that is very, very unacceptable because those bags are very expensive. And if that happened to me, I would feel that I would be upset if I was being careful with the bag and I had only used it 2 or 3 times. But when you're using a bag, especially if you use it every single day, it is going to wear. That is just going to happen. So people who like get very upset when they have a bag that they've had for, 6 months to a year, they're using it almost every day and it's seeing wear. I just think that's like unattainable perfection. It's a item you are literally using, so it is going to wear. It's just like how it happens. Like this bag, I'd say is very well made. It does have feet. Is well structured. It's a little more slouchy because of the type of leather, but like it's in really good condition. It does have some corner wear because I worn it and carried around and loved it. I know other people have because I bought this pre-loved, and so like I'm okay with that. That's just like the bag is wearing because I love the bag and I use the bag. And my whole thing behind luxury is not to like have it to like put it in a closet, it's like to have it to use it. And then lastly, I think something we need to understand as well is there's a lot of talk on the pre-loved market about resale value and how resale value will go down when you use a bag. Yes, that is true most of the time. Granted, like your Hermes bags have like a whole nother trajectory, but like in general, bags, you use them, their resale value goes down. There's nothing wrong with that because you used the bag, and so therefore you used some of the value of the bag. And maybe if it's having a ton of price increases and you've barely used the bag and has like no wear to it, you're gonna get more and go back to resell it. But I don't think you can expect retail or above when you have used the bag. The bag is no longer what you initially thought was perfect. So like, I just feel like we, in the 3 stages of like a bag, like buying it, using it, and reselling it, if that's what you choose to do, seem to forget that like you are not, it is a handbag made by a person. So there is going to be some margin of error in there, and everyone's got their own margin of error of like, this is too worn for me, I'm not going to buy that. And that's totally fine. Like, I am more on the side of like, oh, it has a little bit of wear to it, perfect, because then I don't feel bad when it gets its first scratch. It's like when you drive your brand new car off the lot and the first ding, you know, when the stupid acorn or whatever falls on it is like the worst thing in the world. But then by the time, you know, you've had it for a couple of years and someone like dings your door, you're upset, but you're like, okay, I've been using it. Like, that's the product of going shopping and someone parking next to me. So I just think that we have started to become so nitpicky on everything when like it's just a bag, and the more handmade a bag is, the more likely it is to have slight variations and things. Like, when I buy something from Hermes, like, know that they're not going to put something out that is bad quality and that does not live up to their standards, and they will not sell something if it doesn't live up to those standards. So like, I don't sit there with a fine tooth comb and like inspect it. And honestly, I've never been someone who's a big handbag inspector. If I can visibly see there's something wrong with it, like, as in like if I was buying something new from Louis Vuitton, for example, and there was a blatant like watermark on like the Vachetta, I'd be like, okay, I'm not going to buy that, because like I know eventually I'm going to do that to my own bag, but I don't want to buy it like that. Brand new from the store, totally understandable. But like when people are like zooming in to see a little flaw that like no one else notices, I think we're expecting too much out of our bags. They're handbags. But I would love to know what you guys think down below. Like, am I crazy? Like, I understand that they're expensive, and I understand that everyone's gonna have their own like risk tolerance, you know, it's just like investing. But like, I think we are getting like wanting way too much out of like a luxury good. Like, should they hold up well? Like, is there an issue when like straps and stuff are breaking on something that's not old? Yes, but that's a totally different story. I'm just talking like the actual how the bag looks, and like how obsessed we've gotten with everything being like 1000% perfect. So please let me know your thoughts down below. If you don't want to leave a comment, please feel free to DM me on Instagram. I love to chat about this sort of stuff. If you want to see more chatty videos, or if you want to see more reveals, reviews, and comparisons, please make sure to hit the subscribe button down below and the notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video, which is twice a week. If you want to see how I style my bags, please make sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and my blog, all of which are linked down below. Thank you so much for tuning in today, guys, and please let me know your thoughts on this, because I think it's really interesting. Okay, talk to you guys later. Bye, guys.